we'll get into it. All right. Kia ora, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Creative Curiosity. I'm your host. My name is Te Haunui Tuna. I've got a special guest here today. This is Hannah. And she reached out to me the other day and she saw my podcast and was talking about, the journey that I'm on and, sort of adding value to other people and, this podcast being specifically catered towards creative people. She sort of sparked a bit of dialogue with me around some of the internal, sort of those intangibles when it comes to being professional, in the creative space. So, Hannah, I'll give it over to you. So this podcast is going to be run a little bit different. It's going to be pretty much Hannah running the whole thing. I'm just doing the intro and I'm doing the outro, and she's going to be taking over the show, and we're just going to have a conversation. So, I'll give it over to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Te Haunui. I'm so excited to talk with you and dig in a little bit more to your story and look at what's underneath a little bit. I'm so excited.
Oh, me too.
I'm obsessed with creativity, and especially people with vast talent like yours. I have this theory that there's a myth that creativity is for the talented few, when I believe we're actually all creative.
Oh, 100%.
And we can look at people who are so accomplished, who've done so much practice, and think, I can never be like that. But there was a time when I'm sure you felt that way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I'd love to hear, what did you do to shift out of that, or how do you feel looking back on some of your earlier work and seeing that there was actually process and this really practical practice that you recommend?
For me, I know I'm just extremely lucky to be born into the family that I was born into. So my father, he's an artist as well. My siblings, they're creative in their own ways, visual as well as music and things like that. But my dad, he's been an artist his whole life. So I grew up in a house where there was art always around. Like my dad's drawings were up on the walls. He would do portraits of us as kids out of crayon, and he was my art teacher as well at primary school. And he really exposed me to as many different art forms as he could, really. And I loved it. It was fascinating to me. He had comic books, so I'd look at those things, and I was fascinated with like little muscle man characters, especially like super things, because for me, as I'm sure a lot of people around the world, why they're fascinated with superheroes, with the idea of a superhero, is it makes you feel like you can, you want to be like that too, in some sense, so it gives you something to aspire to. And another part of it is just, like we were saying, just being naturally talented. And I know I've done a podcast about it. Being naturally talented has been a gift and a curse.
Yes.
Because I'm naturally talented, I became lazy, growing up. I didn't put as much effort into certain things as I could have. And I'm glad I've learned the lesson now. There's still part of me that is lazy, and, I admit that. But I try not to anyway, as much as I can, not just rely on my talent to get me over the line. And, I think that's a big realization for anybody to have. And in saying that too, for those of you out there who don't believe you are naturally talented or you ain't, that's only half the story. The other half is hard work, and dedication, commitment, like in anything, and anyone can be better than they are right now.
Yes, I love that.
Better is hard work. Talent alone won't make you better.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love hearing like your honesty and authenticity about the like negative effects of being naturally talented, because this is something that people don't talk about.
No, not
like,
at all.
No, that's just a thing. That's just how it is. And I love as well that there's a question for me about whether or not you really are naturally talented, or whether it was just nurtured in you so young that you did a lot of the growth and a lot of the practice before it was a thing, like before it was a problem.
Yeah, true.
I look at my daughter when she's growing, she's 2.5 now. She loves drawing. She doesn't draw anything but scribbles, but she loves it.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that if she was into kicking a ball or riding a bike, she would build those skills in that time when she just wants to learn. She's not thinking about what other people think of her or whether she's got it or not, or what she's drawing or what message she's trying to have. She doesn't have those existential questions that we have when we were in art school, you know, what's my voice? What's my message?
Yeah.
And that's such a gift from your dad. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's the reason he's at the very top for me. Like, he's the person I look up to because of those things. And I've said it before too. You know, although he taught me about all these creative techniques and things like that, you know, where to draw inspiration from, the thing that I'm most grateful about learning from my dad was really how to think. Same here. Was how to think, or how to try to think what is outside of what you can see, you know, what is outside of the box. He was always a person who was, you know, like, oh, what about this other angle? You know, what about trying this different thing? You know, it was never about settling for, you know, what you can, even though what I could do was already amazing, you know, was really, really good. He was always about, like, oh, what else is there? Like, what else? What other ways could you do that? You know, he may not have explicitly told me in that way, but implicitly, that's sort of what I took away from how he spoke to me and how he interacted with me.
So tell me, when you look at a work, like a draft of a sketch you want to do, or when you're conceptualizing or in that stage of building a tattoo, those early stages, do you almost hear his voice in your head? Like driving you to look at it differently?
Now that you said, I will say so. And I think it happened so many times as a kid that it's become non-conscious, which is a word I just learned. And you know, it's a way of thinking. It's a way of that your mind just automatically goes there without even thinking about it. You know, and you know, it's sort of become my autopilot really to think like that. And I haven't really acknowledged it because I don't think about it, you know. But now in this conversation, now that we're bringing it up, it's definitely a thing. Yeah, my dad's voice, or you know, his way of thinking is definitely there in everything that I do.
I wonder what some of those key questions are. Like, if you were to look at a work of someone who you were mentoring, or if you were to say out loud this dialogue that's automatic for you, what are some of the questions you ask when looking at your work to improve it or to make it better?
I think it would be think about the big picture. You know, try to step back and look at it with fresh eyes. I know that's hard to do. Like, I still struggle with that from time to time, you know, because it is easy to get caught up in the details because you're looking at something this close.
Yes.
You know, and for example, in tamoko, when I draw moko on people's arms, for example, I like to think about how the piece flows with their anatomy, you know, not only making a piece that looks nice, but making a piece that looks nice on the area of the body that I'm doing. So that's what I mean with, you know, bigger picture. You know, anyone can make something look nice, but to make it look nice in the context that it's in is something else. And that's something that I try to think about, you know. And for me, where I'm at currently with my tamoko journey, I learned it a couple of years ago that pulling back, you know, on the style of moko that I was doing actually, in my eyes, made it better, you know, because before that I would just make it super detailed for detail's sake. But I found out later on that, you know, the dance between the negative space and the positive space and that balance is what makes a piece overall look nicer than each individual part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at it as a bigger picture and thinking, is what I'm doing in these small areas or small details going to serve that bigger picture?
Yeah. So sometimes it's not just what can I add or what can I improve. It's sort of what can I take away? How can I simplify and distill this?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I also think it's a really nice evolution that you've recognized of this detail, but recognizing that the message and the story you're trying to tell is actually king. It's not just the first visual impression.
Yeah.
When you said that you like to look at it through the eyes like of a stranger, I think of Austin Kleon. He wrote this book called Still Like an Artist.
Wow.
And I heard him talking about it one day, and he said when he writes things, he puts it in a drawer for at least a week so that it becomes strange.
Yes.
And then when he pulls it out, he looks at it like a stranger. But I imagine as a tattooist, you're often having to do that editing process so quickly after conceptualizing, because a person can't sit there forever.
Yeah, I can just wait there for a week and I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
And adjust.
Yeah. So that must be quite a practice that you've built of hearing their story and building it into a visual representation quite quickly.
Yeah. And I think it's like thinking about that, I think it's contextual too, because of the work that I do. It's like multi-medium. Like I don't just do moko, I don't just draw, I don't just paint. I think if you have the luxury of time, it's always good to be able to put that piece in the drawer and come back.
Yes.
But in this context with moko, because it's it happens right now, and with moko, you freehand, you draw on the body before you start the actual physical tattooing process. And in that instance, you have to think quickly, and that comes with repetition. It comes with doing it hundreds and thousands of times. So it's at a point now, and I was just talking to my client I just had the other day about it too, because he was saying, like, how do you do that? Like, how can you see what you're going to eventually tattoo? Because man, I can't see anything. And I just said, like, I have like a library in my mind, of designs and patterns and meanings. And in the beginning, you have, when you learn, you have a vast array of different designs and patterns to choose from. But for me, because I've reduced my style down, I only have a few to choose from, so it's way easier.
Yes.
So you know what I mean? So because there's only a few different designs and approaches that I choose from, there's way less sort of conflict in my mind about which to choose. You know what I mean?
It sounds to me like you've learned a visual language of moku. A kid, when they're learning, if they're learning te reo, it comes so easily. But then an adult trying to learn, like me, trying to learn the odd few words of te reo, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so challenging.
Yeah.
I can say the colours and nothing else. It doesn't flow like it does for a native speaker, right? But eventually, if I kept learning, eventually it would flow. I would have the syntax and the but it's so much harder when we're learning things later on.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you've learned this, you're bilingual in meanings and visuals.
Yeah.
It's so long building that library. Love that image of having that visual library. It's a really good way of explaining it. From my understanding of creativity, and when you're drawing from that library as opposed to doing the research from scratch, like if that's the difference between learning and building the library and having it there, that brings more joy and flow to your work because of that ease. Do you find as you get more practiced, sort of you enjoy it more?
Yes and no. I enjoy it more because of that, because there is less conflict in my mind about, which decisions to make and the amount of decisions I make. So because of that, the decisions that I can make are fun ones. So it's about how to make this look cooler than it could have, you know what I mean? And so that's the positive side. And then the negative side is, or for me, this is, personally, is without that, that conflict and that, what did you call it? Yeah, that conflict, it kind of makes it boring sometimes. You know what I mean? Because having a bit of a challenge there, and this is sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes I would rather it be easy, so my mind can be elsewhere or can focus on other things. But sometimes when that happens too much, I just get bored of it, which is the reason that back in 2018 I wanted to finish. I had got into a point in my own personal journey of moko, where I felt like I had done everything that I wanted to do in this realm, and I wanted to grow elsewhere. And for me, I felt I owed it to all my clients because, I'm doing permanent work on them. I felt I owed it to them that if I'm not my 100% in this space, then I can't do my absolute best work. I was still doing good work, but what matters to me is doing my absolute best work when I can, as much as I can. So because that wasn't a thing for me, I wanted to finish. And I realized that, it was just because I had done it so much, and I felt a hunger for creativity elsewhere. And then from that, I ended up reducing my workload for moko and introducing other creative forms of outlets, so like video production and more digital art and things like that. And it sort of balanced my creative scales, and so now I enjoy, and it made me enjoy my moko more, which is something I didn't see happening. I was 100% certain on finishing for the rest of my life. So there's, for me, it's positives and negatives to that.
It's kind of like that experience you had with your dad when he would show you all these different things, the comic books and the drawings of his on the walls, and drawing you guys in crayon, and all of those different mediums. That creative play was so celebrated in your upbringing, but also pushing you, encouraging you, how else could you do that? What else could you do to be like your best, do your best work and be proud and strong? And that sometimes there's this fear when we've built up this certain level of success or this certain level of like confidence, that if we make a switch, we've got to go back to the beginning.
Yes.
But it's never back at the beginning. And the more we have this eclectic knowledge or try different things, we can bring it back, and it makes our original craft better.
Yes.
And it's interesting that you're seeing that in your experience as well, because I think especially for listeners of yours who are thinking, how can I be a creative, and I have to go to art school, and then I have to, be in that starving, I'm going to work as a waitress for 6 years.
The starving artist life.
Yeah, we've got this straight line view of like these milestones that it takes to be an artist.
Yeah.
When actually, as I talk to different artists and learn about stories like yours, it's following your curiosity. I did this competition, or I built this community, and those things are so much more impactful than I went to art school. But we have this expectation of ourselves to hit these markers somehow, and that makes us afraid to transition and follow our curiosity later on in our career.
100%.
So that's one of the things that drew me to your podcast and to your work, is that you are branching out and you are challenging yourself, and like that takes bravery.
And the thing is, like everything you said, you hit the nail on the head. The thing is, you're the only person who gets in your way. Like, it's those internal battles you have in your mind that stop you. No one can stop you. Even if 1 million people tell you, don't do it, you'll suck. It's up to you whether you let them actually affect your decision. Because at the end of the day, only you can make the decision. And like you were saying too, I had gotten to a point where, it was my identity. It is me. Like, I'm a moko artist. I'm proud to be a moko artist, but, I didn't want to just be that. And like you said, because of my upbringing, I was surrounded by different forms of art. Like my dad literally made this piece of artwork out of zip ties, PVA glue, pastels, and paint. You know what I mean? Like that was the sort of stuff I grew up around, and that was my normal. My normal was experimenting, was trying different things, and he was always the person who would try different things. So, now that you bring it up, that is
Kiwi ingenuity.
Yeah, exactly. That's 100% where I got it from.
Yeah, I love that about multicultural as well, how much they celebrate art and the storytelling. Like, from Punamu to Mokus, and like the way they capture their gods and the stories.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful, and it's integrated so much into life. Art is
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be, I believe. I think it's so humbling to see that, just the way that Māori people, and this is my opinion, I don't know a lot about it, but they have fought to maintain those parts of their culture, and I find that so powerful.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that
me too.
Those different voices and different images are out there to inspire, but that in this modern world you also get to draw from a whole range of other inspiration and retell your own stories.
Yeah. That you're speaking to me, because that's so this is my this is where my purpose in life is, if I could break it down. It's using Māori stories to inspire Māori people and Indigenous people, because for me this is sort of an area that I've identified, or I think I've identified as while we're talking about storytelling and all these sort of things, and like as a Māori, like whenever we meet people, it's about connection, and that that's why we have a pepeha or a genealogy story. We talk about our mountain, our river, our waka, our canoe, all of these sorts of things. And the reason we do that is to make a connection to people. You know what I mean? Just to say, this is the area of the country that we are from and that we would like to protect, and you're from there. This is where we connect in our history, so we are brothers, or we are brothers and sisters, you know what I mean? And for me, I believe that sharing Māori stories and maybe helping our people, especially our people who are disconnected and, disconnected through no fault of their own, through having to leave home for work, or through, any injustices that have happened, through generations, that I hope that my stories can maybe spark at least some curiosity to want to connect from where they're from, or to maybe ask a question like, oh man, who am I? Like, who am I really? Who and where do I come from? And if I can do that, I'll be a happy man. And I found this out 3 years ago. And I remember when I found it out, for me, I was just like, man, yeah, that's it. That's why I've been doing the work that I've been doing. And that's why it's made it a little bit easier for me to branch out, because I know that branching out, it really can help, I believe, cast a wider net, because I know with moko, I can only affect a certain amount of people, and that's cool, that's amazing. But I know that I can affect different people, and potentially more people if I try this other thing and this other thing. And the bonus for me, like the cherry on top, is the fact that I enjoy all of these things. So it fills me up too. So it's win for me. I get to do things like this, like do a podcast with you and have a cool, meaningful conversation. And I'm super lucky, and I'm grateful for where I am right now. And it wouldn't have happened if all of those things in my past hadn't have happened and accumulated to this. If I attached myself to moko so much, my identity to it so much, I wouldn't have started a podcast. I wouldn't be doing this stuff.
There's this theory of creative achievement, so roads to achieve creative achievement, and I keep coming back to this in my creative conversations lately, and you're reflecting it really well, so I'll summarize it quickly, because I think it's so powerful for people in the early stages of their creative career, or looking at it as career, to attach to the internal motivation as opposed to the external. And how the theory goes is that the one path to creative achievement is an obsessive, passionate path. And it's where your passion is driven by the results, the fame, the money, and when it's driven by that, you tend to push yourself too hard, work too hard, cause injury. You tend to get anxiety because you're comparing yourself to others or judging whether you're good enough. It's like a dog eat dog, must beat that person, like a better than.
It's a zero-sum game, eh? Yeah.
And most people burn out. They crash. They don't reach. artistic achievement or the creative achievement that they set out for. And the other way, the other path is a harmoniously passionate path. And with the harmoniously passionate path, you've got much more of a focus on learning and growth. You're more likely to take on challenges that are uncomfortable, that might not work out, because you're going to grow from them.
Yeah.
It's that like a harmoniously integrated into your life. So art is one pillar, but it's not your identity.
Yeah.
And so you're able to have your community and your friendships and all these other things which inform your art, but you create for the sake of creating. And even though it seems like, oh, but that's not attached to the goal of this achievement I want to have, ironically, the achievement comes anyway, and much faster, because you don't have the injury and the obstacles that come from that obsessive, passionate path. But also, when they come, you don't really care, because they're not benchmarks of what you're trying to create.
It's just a bonus,
Yeah. I find this model so interesting, because the sooner we can trust our own motivations and connect with why we create instead of what we're creating, that is so transferable. And I'm so curious to hear how you're moving this message of connecting people and stories and maintaining this heritage into more modern mediums, and what's driving your curiosity in that space.
Man, that was beautiful what she said. And it reminds me of, so I'm reading at the moment Atomic Habits, and there's a part in the book, I'm really early on in the book, and he talks about ways to change your habits, and at the root of it, the main thing that can help change your habits is changing your identity. And I've heard this before from Tony Robbins, or Tony Robbins,
logical levels of change.
Exactly. And we only we can do things for a short term, for a short burst, as much motivation as we have, but eventually we fall into old habits because those things don't align with our identity. For example, I heard an example he said in the book, which is about smoking. For example, for one person saying, "Oh, like I'm trying not to smoke. I haven't smoked for 30 days or whatever." There's still that part of them, of their identity, that is saying that they're a smoker, but they're just a smoker who isn't smoking. And then the other person says, "I'm not a smoker." You know what I mean? And when I read it, and I read another version of it earlier, it aligned, and it made so much sense, because for me, I'm vegan. And the day that it got easier to be vegan and it became effortless was the day I accepted that I'm vegan fully. I'm not just a person who's trying to be vegan, who's trying not to eat all these things. It just became part of my identity. And now it's easy not to eat all the things I can't eat. You know what I mean? So, that's sort of just a little parallel that I drew with what you were saying.
Yeah, totally aligned.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, what were we just talking about?
I'm curious about, because I'm noticing that this is your natural way. You were naturally, or at least you've chosen this harmonious path. I've heard you say before, don't worry about the followers, just put your stuff out. And and from the story you're telling me about connecting with your purpose, and I'm wondering, I guess, what's in the future, like how are you shifting that into film and incorporating these different mediums and expanding your curiosity and your creativity in that way?
So there's so many things that I want to do, and I know with all of the things that I do, I definitely want them to come from a Māori worldview, because for me, part of being authentic or what I think authenticity is really commenting, like this is in terms of art, is really commenting or creating work that aligns with things that you believe in, or that aligns with your lane, if I can put it that way. Like I would never tell a story about something that happens in the Middle East, or something that happens in Africa, or something that happens in Asia, because I don't know what it's like to be from there. I have no connection to those places. Like if I go back generations, like hundreds of generations back, I'm connected there. But for me, I would rather tell stories of of our history from here, because I can connect to it easier. And I feel if I can connect to things easier, and if it feels right, then it makes it easier to dive into that story or that space, and to create work that I believe can, I don't know, maybe really just share my own personal view of that, that bigger picture. Like, for example, with the Black Lives Matter drawing that I just did, the reason that I feel so strongly about it is because, being Māori myself, and, Māori have faced a lot of injustices for generations, and so it's easy to empathize,
Yeah, of course.
People who have been oppressed can empathize with other people who have been oppressed, you know what I mean? And so that's where I draw the parallel. And also I know, I have friends who are in the Black community, so because they're my friends, they're my brothers and they're my sisters. So I thought that, in times when I feel like I don't know what to say, I use my art to say what I can't say, you know what I mean? So that's why I did that. And so later on, when I move into film eventually, like, who knows, maybe it doesn't happen, but at the moment where I am now, I think it will happen, maybe later on down the track, something that's more meaningful will pop up that will take the place of what I think filmmaking will be. But if I end up still going down that path, I want to tell stories of, triumph and, inspiring stories. But the stories that I love are stories of the flawed hero, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't like not that I don't like them, but I like the flawed hero more than just the hero that's all good and zero bad, you know what I mean? Because that's unrelatable. Yeah, we can't relate to that, because no one is perfect, you know what I mean? But we can relate to somebody who tries their best to be good most of the time, and who slips up, but they admit their failures, they acknowledge it, they take responsibility, and then they pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and carry on, you know what I mean? Like, I want to tell stories like that, of these people in our history. And also to, I believe if we can do that, I believe that looking back and learning, seeing where you have come from, and where, then you can better navigate where you are now, and, where your future is. It helps make sense of how things are now. That's what I believe anyway. And I'm excited about doing these sort of things.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I can already see glimpses of this. It's like, what I love about how you're living so openly and how you're learning so openly in your art is that it's not an instant transition. It's not like, scene change, now he's a filmmaker. It's like, okay, I'm interested in this. And so instead of just doing the moku, I'm going to tell the story of the person I'm doing it on.
Yes.
I watched one of those earlier, and I thought, I could see more where that's going, and at the end of the day, you're allowed to try like little experiments.
Yeah, exactly.
And learn from them instead of doing these big gestures that might fail epically or might succeed wonderfully. And like, with such high stakes, it doesn't usually start that way.
Yeah.
And so you're already building the blocks that start to make it so that in 5 years' time you're making films and it seems effortless. There's now this trail, this journey that shows people that it's possible through little steps regularly, like your little atomic habits,
Yeah, and that's exactly why I'm doing these things, because I look at them as exactly that. I look at them as small stepping stones and small lessons, on the journey towards becoming a filmmaker, hopefully, and it's funny because at the very top of my list of things that I want to do in my life is make video games, or at least make one amazing video game. And for me, I've got it like 20 plus years down the line, because I believe that all the things I want to do on my way to making video games are all going to contribute to making a video game, or making one that I would love to see and I would love to play myself.
That's a pinnacle of a story, isn't it? It's like this.
Yeah.
I was reading this book recently. It was a fiction book, but it had a character who was he wasn't a game designer, but he would review them or something. And the author made this point that it's sort of this happy medium between real life, where moments are stretched so long and there's these big stretches of boredom or conversation or just regular to every day, like doing the dishes and things that they're not exciting or sexy for a story, right? So they get culled when you read like a novel or watch a movie. All of that is, quick montage and let's move on. But when you're in a video game, you can linger and have a random conversation in a bar with a stranger, and you can do this little side quest, and you get to build the story so much more robustly. I thought that was an interesting idea, and I can see the appeal.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I just had a podcast yesterday with one of the bros, and we were talking about games, and that's the thing, it's an like games now, especially, they're interactive movies, you know what I mean? And like you said, they're stretched out, it's like real life. You have that journey between this highlight reel and that highlight reel. You have to do all of the stuff in between, and that's what I think. Yeah, now that you put it that way, that's probably a reason why it's so fascinating to me.
I think people are also motivated by having some autonomy, having some control over what they're a part of. And so video games are much more co-creational. They get, it's
like a collaboration,
in playing it, you get to choose a little bit more the journey, or you get to be involved. There's no like one way to kill the boss. There's lots of ways to kill the boss, kind of. And you get to figure that out and have a little bit of challenge and find that there's this whole addictive quality with gaming around that flow, happy place. We were talking about earlier in our conversation, this implicit memory, I would call it, but your library and accessing your library, and then also balancing that with just the right amount of challenge. Not too challenging, but not too easy that it becomes boring. And that's where whole gaps of time just disappear.
Yeah.
And I find this very interesting as a concept, especially for artists and creatives, because we have this idea when we're inexperienced amateur artists that creating is fun, like all the time, that during the creating process we should be like, look at me, I'm creating. But actually what happens is during the creation we are so focused and in the zone, and we've got this nice combination between what we know, like how to hold a pencil or how to the proportions of a face or whatever we already know. So that's just flowing through, and this nice amount of challenge of what we're trying to learn. And then afterwards, after this gap of time, then we feel the stoke.
Yeah.
It's like pride and looking back on it. But a lot of artists, when I talk to them in these early stages, they're frustrated. Like, why am I not enjoying this? I spent 2 hours in the studio today, and I can't see myself spending 8 hours in the studio. Why is that your goal? Like, stop.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because for me, there's a lot of artworks that I create where the first minute is fun, 85% of it is shit. And then the last part of it is like gas, when you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. When it's the real fun is when it starts looking how you imagine it in your mind, or even better sometimes.
Yes.
And then, at the end of it, you get to sit back and look at it and appreciate, the work that's gone into it. And, this idea that you made something out of nothing, you know what I mean? That blows my mind sometimes, like that thing right there that I made did not exist 2 days ago or, an hour ago, and I think that's pretty powerful when you think about it like that. And like you said too, like when I was a kid, I would draw all the time because it was fun. And because, I was only drawing things that I loved. And because you're, because you're a kid, you're not that good. You draw things real simplified, so it doesn't take long to draw simplified things.
Yes.
You don't have to go through that grind of making it look how you want it to look. It takes 2 seconds to draw a sun, what I mean? So, you get that instant gratification. But as you get older and, more experience in your art, and, your ambitions start growing, the time that it takes to create pieces takes longer as well.
Yeah. That's fascinating. That that self-reflection and the growth of how it feels as a little kid and how it feels after. Yeah, I think sometimes feelings can be a bit deceptive if we're trying to judge our progress or our flow by how we feel about it.
Oh yeah,
Learning is hard.
yeah, because a lot of times, like, if it feels like shit, you probably should be doing it.
Yeah,
because it's you're growing, you know.
Don't quit.
Yeah,
it gets better.
Yeah, it's that deep lull before that climax, you know. It goes that way. It doesn't go like this. It goes that way.
What are your favorite strategies when you sense that you're in one of those spots where something didn't come as easy as you thought, or it's not going as quickly as you thought? You're not seeing progress.
Depending on if you have time, you know, if it's not an urgent deadline, just go do something totally different. Do something, just step away from it. If you feel like you're working so hard and nothing is happening, you know, just step away, do something else and breathe. Like, if you're into watching movies, like, go watch a movie, you know, if you have time, like I say. If you're into sports, go play your sport, whatever your sport is. If you like working out, go work out and then come back and do it later on. And this is probably a thing I've been battling for ages, you know, is that creative slump that all artists go through. And this year, or especially the last few months, a big part of my life has been implementing habits, so, you know, positive rituals into my everyday, in order to combat those, you know, those creative blocks or those ruts that you go through in life. And I know for myself, whenever I try to think myself out of a rut, it doesn't work. You know?
Yes.
I have to physically move myself out, and I don't get it right all the time. You know, sometimes I don't want to, like, and I accept it. Sometimes I accept that I don't want to create, and if I have the luxury of not having to, then I won't. But then sometimes, you know, I'm a bit more courageous or strong, and then I just get up and just say, nah, let's get back into it, or let me just go clean up my cabin, you know, clear my mind, and then do some work, or go have a cold shower and refresh, you know, things like that. And
these are all such good strategies.
I've realized, you know, for myself, because, you know, in an ideal world, I would go from lazy habits to good habits just like that. But I've realized for myself that minimizing the spaces between those waves of productivity, I take those as wins, even if it's a small minimization in that space. I'll take that as a W. And moving forward, like, this year has been the best start to a year in my life because of that, because of overcoming those personal challenges. And I hope that people listening can relate to this, and I'm sure you will, because you know, we see a lot of artists and, you know, a lot of people who are super productive and they're doing super well. You know, this may not be anything to do with money, but all of those people, you know, whether they share it or not, you know, they go through those times where they just, you know, they cannot be bothered, or, you know, or they go through times when it's hard, when they struggle, you know. And I'm grateful that now, you know, people sharing their struggle, people love it, you know. People love that people share their struggle, because that's relatable, you know. That makes people realize that the journey is worth it, you know, and that they are on the right path. Because, you know, if people are on a path and the people they look up to never share the struggles that the amateur artist is on, then they believe they're on the wrong path, or, you know, they believe they're being faced with setbacks that the professional artist isn't. But you know, that's one of the many reasons that I try to share as much of you know, those struggles as I can, because those are the things I wanted to hear when I was coming up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love some of the things you've said here. Like, I think these are such powerful lessons and so important for any early artists, but even established artists. Don't think yourself out of a rut, move yourself out of a rut. That's amazing. Also, this level of acceptance, and I think that comes with practice. It sounds to me like you've got strategies for early artists and then strategies for professional artists. Like as professional artists, there are some times when you don't have a say over the time you have. There's a deadline, there's a commission, there's a whatever, and you just got to pull your big boy pants up and do it.
Exactly.
And you can't judge whether it's your best work or whether it's you just got to get it done and then do what you need for your self-care after.
Yeah.
But when you are learning, and it's so important to nurture this positive mindset that actually putting it down, accepting this helps you to move through it faster. And it's almost like then you've built the neural pathways or whatever you need, that by the time you're operating in that high level, high pressure professional environment, you kind of like, oh yeah, I remember how this goes.
Yeah.
And I know it'll pass. It's okay. But when we're first figuring it out, in the moment, it feels like, right, well, that's my career done.
I'm not built for this. Exactly.
And you have a good sleep and you wake up and you're like, oh, what was I thinking? It feels so much better.
Exactly. You feel like a new person and you think like, man, how did I possibly think that I could not get out of that?
Yeah.
You know?
One of my biggest, I guess, missions. So if your mission is to connect people with stories, my mission is to empower people to keep doing their creativity.
Yeah, yes.
And one of the key lessons I wish I could make everybody learn is that judgment and comparison stop creativity in its tracks. It turns up the volume of your executive center of control in your brain, and it stops things coming through from the creative parts of your brain.
Oh,
and the more you can like forget what everyone else is doing and forget beating yourself up and just approach your art from a place of compassion and a place of like community instead of competition, your work will be so much better. You'll grow so much faster. You'll get over these ruts so much more quickly.
Yes.
But it, like everything else, is a habit, because we're naturally wired to fall into judgment, to fall into doubt, to beat ourselves up, to think we're not good enough. And it takes time and attention to retrain those. And seeing the proof and celebrating the proof and making these regular reflections to go, wow, I've come a really long way.
Yes.
You know?
I love that. And it, you know, I had a conversation with my mother-in-law last year or the year before, and we were just talking about because she's an artist as well. She works with she's in the weaving space. You know, she works with flax and things like that, and my partner as well. And we were just talking about really just being creatives, being artists. And I was telling her, I was like, man, like, you know, one of the big reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing now professionally, you know, apart from being talented, apart from, you know, my dad being my dad, is I just carried on. I just didn't stop, you know what I mean? And like I had heaps of mates growing up, one in particular at primary school, who was, when he first came to our school, because he started after me, I believed he was better than me, you know what I mean? And throughout school, like we were like pretty on par, you know, in terms of our technical ability with drawing. And then we got to high school, and halfway through, maybe he just stopped. And it's cool to see over the past couple of years he's picked it back up again.
Nice.
But you know, there are countless people who would be professional artists if they just literally carried on. And like I would like to I'd like to touch on what you're talking about that you know, fear of judgment and things like that. And I don't know if you saw a video that I did, I think it was 2 years ago, 2018. And I was going through like this rut. I think it was about a month-long rut. And at the end of it, came out with some good learnings. But I made this video, and it was about the fact that for years and years and years, you know, pretty much my whole professional career, I hadn't created for the sake of creating. You know what I mean? Which is the reason I'm here. You know, that's the reason I did art in the first place, is because it was fun. You know, I was curious. I was wondering if I could draw that thing that I saw in that comic book. You know what I mean? And I think if artists out there, you know, it's one thing me telling you, you know, obviously it's going to be harder than I'm saying if you let it be hard. You know, and it's just, be that kid again, be that curious kid. I say it in the video too. I said, you know, I hope that I remain that curious, creative kid.
Mm.
And that's the reason this podcast is called Creative Curiosity. It's an homage to that child who I was, and who is still in here, who saw creativity and was like, man, that's fascinating. Let me jump in that pool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think if people can, remember why they started doing art, and like you were saying before too, if they can live in harmony with that love, that curiosity for art, go back to that place. And creating art will be way easier. But if you're a person who's in it just for money or just for fame or, any of these external factors, it's going to be a hard fight. You may get some success, but you won't feel fulfilled. You know what I mean? Or I don't believe you'll feel fulfilled if you admit it to yourself. You may say you do, but I don't believe you truly will be. And, that leads us on to the next part, which is judgment and, comparison and not thinking that you're good enough. It's a thing that everyone goes through, unfortunately, and you're the only person who can stop letting those voices affect you. And that's a big reason I've tried to implement all of these sort of positive habits into my life, to help combat those things, because I still face that, where I am now, I still overthink things. That's why I made that overthinking video. Like I think, is this cool, or like, is this too random compared to all the other things that I post? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I still face that from time to time, and I'm grateful for the times that I snap myself out of it. I give myself a metaphorical kick up the ass to snap out of it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And when I do that, I never regret anything that I post.
Yeah.
Because all the things that I post is who I am. You know what I mean? Like, I've got posts about gaming, about movies, about art, about all sorts of things, and those things are me. And if people are here for the journey and they don't like certain aspects, that's cool. They can just follow me for just my art or just for my gaming love, and that's cool. And if there are people who love all of it, man, we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I think it's so good what you're doing, and so many people are going to be inspired by the way you tell your story, the way you authentically acknowledge these shadow sides of creativity, and that it's just so powerful. I'm so grateful.
Oh, me too. And I tell you now, at the beginning it was hard. It was hard to be myself because I had become this identity of being a moko artist, being a tattoo artist. And, to step away from that, it was really hard. And I encourage anybody listening, that first step is going to be the hardest. Like any first step in any journey that you go on is going to be the hardest. But, the more you do it, it gets easier. Like for me now, like it's easy to openly talk like this with anybody who is willing to meet me there as well. You know what I mean? Like I won't talk like this to somebody who doesn't want to listen, or to somebody who isn't doing the same, to someone who's closed off and isn't opening up to me as well, So I encourage you to, everybody out there to, if this resonates with you, I'm glad. And, I hope this helps you on your journey, whatever you're up to. And if not, but somebody this may resonate with, like, share it to them and let them know that, everyone goes through it. All those ebbs and flows of life, everyone goes through it. Even though when you're going through those dips, you feel like you're the only person in the world going through it.
Yeah.
And you think nobody will understand. Nobody understands. This is painful. But I think more conversations like this can help. Help people ease the pain, help them, be a little easier on themselves, help them realize that it's just their mind playing games on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, was there any more?
No, I think that's all my questions, and I've just so enjoyed this conversation and hearing
Me
more about your
too.
story. I love creative people who are being creative, and just demystifying it a little bit. It's not this magical thing that some people have and some people don't have.
Yeah.
It's totally something that everyone can have.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And Hannah, I just want to acknowledge you and say thank you for reaching out. And, I really love this conversation. And like I said before we started recording, I love having conversations like this, about creativity, about who we are as people, and, the ways that we all relate to each other, and, the battles and triumphs we all go through. And anyway, like in your life, is there anything that, this platform can help you with, like if there was any sort of cause that you're sort of behind or anything like that, just, talk about it and let the people who are listening know, and, maybe they can come and check it out.
Yeah, I guess my thing is that I was one of those people who thought that design school was enough, that if I just did that, C's get degrees, if I get my degree, that's going to be enough to set me on my path to greatness, creative greatness. And it didn't. Blew up in my face, and I wish that I had all of this knowledge, that because I was the only thing that held me back from really breaking through to what I wanted to do. And I ended up getting all this experience in the finance industry and a ton of other things. And now, like, I've shared some of the lessons I've been learning from reading about neuroscience and the way that we think about creativity and we approach our creativity. And so now I'm building my creative coaching practice where I can help people to work through some of this themselves. It's in its very early stages, and I, at the moment, do free clarity calls for creative people where you can have a chat with me for a half hour, an hour, and I just kind of listen to where your goals are and share some wisdom, if I can, with some of the stuff that I know that might help bridge that next little step for you. And I just adore talking to creative people. So if you are interested in that and you think that you might benefit from it, please reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram, and I would love to hear your creative story.
Awesome. What is your your handles and all that?
My handle is hanfitz, so HANFITZ.creates.
Awesome.
And I will send that through to Haunui as well.
Yep, and I'll link all of these in the description, everybody listening. But yeah, Hannah, it's been a pleasure. I really do appreciate your time, and I'm glad that you reached out, because this has just opened up my mind to more possibilities and more ways to add value through this podcast and through this platform. So yeah, thank you. Cool. And you enjoy your weekend. I look forward to connecting again. This definitely won't be the last time, I'm sure. And I hope everything goes well with you. And yeah, let's keep this dialogue open. And
I'd love that. Thank you.
No, awesome. So everybody listening, this is Creative Curiosity. I'm your host. My name is Te Haunui Tuna. Thank you for listening in. I hope you got some informative value from this. Like I said earlier, if you know somebody who may gain some value from this, please share this with them. And we do appreciate you. Mōri ora. Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. You have a good day.
That's all right. That was just an amazing conversation. I think
it was.
You got so much depth and quality to your work and the way you think about work, and such an awareness of your process. It's really, really inspiring. Love it.
Oh, thank you. It really means a lot. And yeah, I shed some tears too before.
It's like, parents inspiring creativity. This is amazing.
I've spoken about my dad heaps, and I'm sure I'll speak about him many more times too. All right, Hannah.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. I'll see you next time.
Bye.
See you later.